Morning, Blazer Nation. How's everybody doing today? You know I can't hear you, but hopefully you're doing well. Let me introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. I'm Dr. Bobbie Ticknor. I am an associate professor of criminal justice at VSU, obviously. And kind of how did I get here? Well, I've always kind of had a passion for cooking. I grew up as a young child in an Italian family, and really when we cooked, it was kind of our way of showing, how much we cared about each other, how much we loved each other. I wasn't natural to it at the beginning, like most people, but I studied my grandmother and some of the cooking that she did, and just kind of grew over time and just kind of grew my love for it. So you might have saw in the email my 10 minutes of fame. I was on the Food Network, a show called Cooks vs. Cons, where I played basically, they had to guess if you were a real professional cook or a con. That was a few years ago. It was a lot of fun. It's episode, I think, 4 or 5 in season 2. About chicken winging it, check it out. I'm a ham. I like to joke around. I like to be silly. So, of course, I did that on the show as well. So that was just a little bit about me. I've been here about Austin now. This is my 6th year at VSU. Love being a Blazer and really excited to contribute in whatever ways that I can. And food apparently seems to be one that I keep doing. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. So what I'm doing for you today is we're going to have quiche, and I'm going to talk about preparation in 3 different ways. The first is going to just be a pretty standard quiche preparation where you have the crust, vegetables, everything you're adding in. I also wanted to share with students a way that they can actually achieve this by doing the recipe in their dorm rooms if they don't have an oven, because the traditional quiche, of course, we go in the oven. And then I'm going to talk through maybe ways that you can kind of heighten this up if you wanted to have a fancy brunch or maybe even a fancy dinner using having the quiche as well. So I'm going to talk through all 3 of those. Quiche is one of those things, it's very versatile. One of the things I like about quiche is if I have some vegetables that kind of the end of the week and they're maybe on their way out, I can throw together a quiche and it's going to feed us. It can be breakfast, brunch, lunch, or dinner. So it's a really versatile type of meal to make. So people usually ask me what's the difference between a quiche and a frittata. I don't know if you've heard of both. Frittata is traditionally an Italian family breakfast item that we would serve. And really the only difference between the two is utilizing the crust. The frittata just has the eggs, vegetables, and cheese or whatever you want to put in it. Usually a frittata you will cook directly in your frying pan, and typically with the quiche you're going to be cooking it in a pie pan. So no major differences there. Call it a frittata if you want without the crust. Basically the same ingredients, the same recipe goes. So you'll actually get a twofer for this. You'll learn how to make quiche and you'll learn how to make a frittata. All right, so let's get into this a little bit. So the first thing, there are a few things, well, there are many things that really need to be homemade. Pasta is so much better homemade, soups and stews and all that. You don't want any of that processed stuff. There's a big exception, pie crust. You really can't go wrong with store-bought pie crust. It is difficult to make and to get right if you want to make it homemade, and it's really not much better at all. Probably some bakers out there that might disagree with me on this, but in my experience, just getting a regular old pie crust, store-bought, I think this is the Pillsbury model, and what I like about these is that this one actually comes in the tin already, so I don't even have to dirty a dish for it. So that's just one of my little tips, and I'll keep throwing things like that in all day, but don't bother spending 2 hours making a pie crust. This is pretty simple and straightforward. So the first thing you want to do, and I've already done this, but the first thing you want to do, and you can do this while we're talking through the rest of the recipe if you're trying to follow along at home, is that you do want to pre-bake this just a little bit. The quiche is very wet. We're going to have a lot of eggs and then the milk and half. So it's very wet. You want to actually get a little bit of this pie here at the bottom. You want to get that already cooked. That way it doesn't come out really soggy when you go to cut it at the end. So another little pro tip that I do, instead of waiting until I have everything ready and then putting the pie crust in and letting it preheat, first thing I do is just put it directly in the oven, and as it gets warm up to the 375 temperature that we want it to be, by the time it hits that, this is ready to go and I can put in my ingredients. So another quick tip. So again, the first thing you want to do, of course, is you do want to pre-bake your oven to 375 degrees. So 375, it really depends on your oven, how much time it's going to take. Usually mine takes anywhere between about 40 to 45 minutes. I have a double oven, so I have the top and the bottom. I'll usually put mine in the top because I know that's got the more consistent heat. I'll tell you about what it should look like as we go along with this. But basically what we want to do, first things first, quiche can be anything. You can put anything in it. You can put potatoes in it. That's actually good too. I put butternut squash and sage in it. Today what we're going to do is a spinach and mushroom quiche with feta cheese. And I actually, even though it's not going to have this on the recipe that will get posted, I had some really good sun-dried tomatoes. These are, if you've had them before, a very strong flavor, so I'm not going to add a ton of that, but I kind of liked having this kind of Mediterranean thing going on with this particular quiche. You can add peppers in it, and there's asparagus and goat cheese. There's really no end to what you can put into a quiche. So literally, again, at the end of the day, if you have just vegetables that are on the way out, make this quick quiche and you'll be good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and start getting into this. First things first, I keep saying that a lot. A little nervous here. First time doing this at my house. It's a little different than doing it when you have a bunch of cameramen and lights on and you can't really see anything. So if I stutter a lot, I'll calm down and it'll all be good to go. This is what being in quarantine for 3 months and not teaching and getting in front of people. But we'll make our way through this. A lot of people ask, is quiche vegetarian? Well, it is made from eggs. There are some substitutes that you can use. One of the ones I really like is just egg. It actually has the texture and the taste of a real egg, and it's vegan. So you can actually use this as a recipe to maybe make a frittata, or depending if you can get a vegan crust or you're vegan or vegetarian friends. That said, a lot of vegetarians will allow eggs. Pescatarians will typically allow eggs as well. So that could be an option if you're having vegetarians coming over for brunch or for dinner. Let's see, what else do I want to say here? All right, let's go ahead and get into this. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to look at my vegetables. Sometimes you may want to pan sear some of your vegetables to break them down. If you're using onions, I would say go ahead and cook those in a pan with a little bit of olive oil just to soften them up. They won't soften as much once it gets into the pie crust. A lot of stuff is fine though. Pretty much you don't have to saute it if you don't want to. It can go right in the quiche and it'll cook as it bakes. So that shouldn't be much of a problem. I'm not doing that here today. If you do decide to pan sear anything as you're getting it prepared, one of the things you want to do is make sure it cools all the way down, because if not, when you go to put hot food into the egg mixture, it's going to start cooking the eggs right in there, and then your quiche will get a little bit wonky. So just another little tip there. First thing we'll do is I always have a little bowl set out that I can kind of dump garbage into. So that's just a good chef habit to get into. That way you don't have garbage everywhere. Keep yourself organized. First thing we're going to do is we're going to add our spinach. Now, the good thing about spinach, this is actually baby spinach, but you can see for baby spinach, this is still pretty big. And so as this cooks down, it's going to get about 1/4 of the size as it cooks down, but we're going to want it even smaller, because if you get these stems, it can get kind of chewy in it. One easy way to do this is you actually take them and bunch them up and then roll them just like this. And then you can actually cut them into smaller pieces, making it more bite-sized as you get into your, if people start to eat your quiche. All right, so this calls for 1 cup of chopped spinach. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. As I said, this cooks down quite a bit. So you're going to want to have a nice amount of spinach going. Any questions so far?
No questions so far.
Okay. I know quiche is pretty straightforward. When Becky asked me to do this, I always ask what kind of level I'm working with. So if I'm working with some that are more advanced, I might do a homemade pasta dish or gnocchi or something like that. But when we have such a mix, I like to do something easy, especially for like students that might be at home or getting ready to come back to the dorms, where they can do it in pretty ease and not have these major advanced cooking skills to be able to do this. Quiche is exactly that. You get a lot of bang for your buck as far as flavor goes, and it's super easy to do, as you'll see.
Well, we do have a comment, Bobbie. You've taught me so much already. I'm definitely a beginner.
That's all right. That's all right. That's a good thing, though. I mean, we all have to start somewhere. I remember the first Thanksgiving dinner that I made once I got married, and my skills were not on point. We did not have turkey that evening. So you really kind of just have to get used to doing it, and that's fine. That's, again, really what being a beginner, make the mistakes. Who cares? You know, you can always throw it away, order out, take out if you need to, but you know, just start cooking, just start trying. I love that my daughter, she just got married in October, and she's really starting to catch the food bug. And it's fun watching her, because I think why she's got it so much is she really feels like she's taking care of people. And that's what I do. I love to entertain, and so I love to feed people. If anyone's ever been to my house, you know you never leave hungry. It's just the way that I, again, show my appreciation for people, show my love for people. That's a good way to get you motivated to start cooking. All right, so we got our spinach. We're gonna take our pie crust, and I like to layer. You can put it directly into the bowl and mix it all together. That's perfectly fine to do that. But I kind of like to control where the portions are and how everything looks and how it's all set up. So I go ahead and I just add this directly into the pie crust, just like that. Can we see that good? Is that good view on that?
Yes, very good.
Perfect. All right, so about a cup. You know, sometimes, you know, as you cook too, you start to eye things a little bit. You know, about a cup. If it seems like it's too much, you can back it down a little bit. But this spinach, again, it is going to shrink down quite a bit, so don't be afraid to be a little heavy-handed. Next thing we're going to add in is our mushrooms. I love baby portobellos. They're versatile. They taste a lot better than white mushrooms. I also like shiitake. You know, there's really not a fungus as far as mushrooms go that I don't love. You can get really fancy if you can, or add truffles to it. I would say slice them. You can also chop them. Either way, I like a nice thick slice on them because I really love that taste of mushroom, that very earthy taste that you get with that. So I like to keep mine just sliced, and then go ahead and just add that directly in. So about a half cup or so. Again, you're getting a lot of boost of that earthy flavors with the mushrooms. You don't want to overwhelm it, but you do want enough in there where you get to taste it. If you love mushrooms like I do, sometimes I add a whole cup just because I love that flavor. And then, of course, the vegetables. The last thing I'm going to add, these beautiful sun-dried tomatoes. Again, this is a big flavor. It's going to add some tanginess to the dish. You can add as much of those as you like. Keeping that in mind, you can see it's the things that have more potent flavors. Those are the things that you want to add, you know, be a little bit more conservative on. Things like artichokes, those have a lot of big flavor. Leeks, not so much. Those are pretty good. Just pan-sear and get them in there. But fennel, that's that black licorice flavor not everyone likes. I love fennel. Again, that's very heavily used in Italian cooking. But again, it's that strong flavor, so you really just have to know a little bit about your vegetables that you're putting them in. All right, so I'm going to keep that in the pie. And am I going at a good pace? I know a couple people wanted to try this at home. So if I'm going too fast, feel free to yell in. The first thing we're going to do is you're going to crack five large eggs. If you're using egg whites, you really want to about 1.5 times if you're going to do the egg whites with it. If you're doing the just egg, you're going to do about 1/4 cup equals 1 egg. So if you do egg beaters or anything like that too, 1/4 cup is equivalent to 1 egg. So here we've got our eggs, 5 already cracked for us. And then I'm going to start to just layer in some spices. So quiche is perfectly good with just salt and pepper. You can start to get creative if you want. Like I said, I've done butternut squash with fresh sage leaves, a lot of fresh parsley. Oftentimes I put into a quiche. Basil is great in quiche. What I hear is I did a dry mix this morning, and this has some basil, oregano, crushed red pepper, and a little bit of granulated garlic, just again to tap into those Mediterranean flavors. You don't have to limit yourself with the spices. I've used turmeric. I've used fennel, any kind of dry spices that you want to use in there. Just remember that the fresh spices are not going to give you as much flavor as a dried spice because they're dried and it really kind of intensifies that flavor of the spices. So just be careful, depending on how much you like the spice, how much you're going to add if you do that. So I'm going to start out by putting in some of my seasoning. And if you want to measure this out, probably about a tablespoon, maybe 2 if you really like a lot of that, that nice earthy flavor that those particular spices give you. And then for those who might be starting to be a chef at home, I love this little gadget. What it allows me to do is have my most used spices where they're easy for me to get to. So on here, my top layer, I have crushed red pepper. This is actually crushed red pepper from Sicily. I was there 2 years ago, and I still have some of the goodies I brought back from that, which I know a lot of people would say that's way too old for a spice, but this spice was from some really good pepper, so it still has that nice pungent flavor to it. Pepper, just regular old pepper. A lot of people, they're using the grinders now. I prefer not to have a very small grained peppercorn. I like the coarse pepper. I don't know if you can see this. You can actually see all the little different pepper in there, and it just gives you that more kind of zing to your dish. I also like to use coarse salt, or kosher salt, some people call it. You don't want to over salt. You don't want to, go too crazy on it. You really salt and pepper everything to taste, keeping a mindful eye on. You really don't want to mess up your heart and all that good stuff with adding too much salt. I like to add the coarse salt because you don't need as much of it if you're grinding it. I also like to use a Himalayan salt sometimes in dishes. You have to be very sparingly with that Himalayan salt though, because it is a definite very salty flavor. All right, so then next we're going to add our cheese. I make this with everything. It can be cheddar, it can be smoked Gouda, it could be goat cheese. Here I'm using feta today, again going with this Mediterranean theme. And you're going to add about a cup to this. Now remember, this quiche is going to be, it's 8 different servings, so it's not as bad as it sounds. And you can always, this particular feta, this is a low-fat feta that was, so it's made with, these low-fat cheeses are often made with something that's part skim, so it's not as bad for you. All right, so we got our eggs and everything else combined. I do want to say real quick, the liquid in this is going to be a half cup milk and a half cup cream, or 1 cup of half and half. Make it easy. Now I picked a fat-free half and half just again to make it a little healthier, but the half and half is just fine. You can use that and not have all the extra fat of the actual cream. So we're going to go ahead and pour this directly in as well. You want 1 cup total if you're using half and half, or a half cup cream, half cup milk mixed together. How we doing, Becky?
We're doing good.
All right. So we're just going to whisk this, and you'll see all the eggs start to get all blended in. And the spices are going to get blended in as well. It's really going to bring out that flavor. All right, just want a nice blend on that. And we're going to have our pie crust. Here's another pro tip. You really want to have a pan under your quiche because it will sometimes leak out as it gets bigger in the oven. So go ahead, before you even pour your eggs, put it on top of just a sheet pan. It can be really big, or this one actually is perfect size for this. And then from there, you're just going to pour your quiche mixture, your egg mixture, right into the pie crust. What you want to do here is just make sure it's fully covering everything. Fill it to the top. Don't overfill, or you're going to have eggs all over your pan, and you don't want that because they're really difficult to get off these sheet pans. So basically that's it. At this point, if you want to add a little more cheese on top, you can do that. I will typically, because I love the flavor of pepper, I will add just a little bit more on top. A lot of times I'll add some fresh parsley right on top as well. If I want to fancy it up a little bit, you can actually roast tomatoes on top. So at this point, I would just thinly slice ramen tomatoes or some kind of a smaller tomato, and then put little slices all the way around, kind of make it very decorative as well. And that roasted tomato is pretty awesome add to it. So that's basically the typical quiche. Again, you're going to put this in your preheated oven. It's going to go about anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. I start checking it at 30. What you're looking for is if this gets solid, it's going to look like eggs. If there's any wet in the middle, it's not done yet. So if you want to stick a fork in and if it comes out dry, you know that it's done. You can also just pat the center, and if it just has a bounce to it, then you know it's done as well. So again, anywhere in your oven between 30 and 45 minutes. So we go ahead. Magic of cooking shows. We put this into our oven. And after 45 minutes or so, we have a beautiful quiche.
Yeah.
What do you think? Pretty good, right? So that's the finished normal quiche. I do want to step through a couple other quick preparations. All my Blazer students out there, hopefully I've got a few in here. You don't have these in your dorm room, get them. These are called ramekin dishes. You can make anything in a microwave using a ramekin. All you need to do is make sure you use some kind of a cooking spray, something like ham, or you can just use a little bit of butter, or even just a little drizzle of olive oil. And same preparation. You're still going to add the vegetables. Go ahead and spray this down. I use a spray because it's easy. I don't have to get my hands wet or anything in there. You're just going to add your vegetables. Just like we did before. Although I used all my cheese in here, so we're good to go there. And then here, you're going to just put in the egg directly in the ramekin. You're going to fill it about 3/4 of the way through. You can see, give you a close-up, nice and easy. And this is super easy to make. You're going to throw this into the microwave for 1 minute. And what that's going to do is going to start the cooking process. Depending on what power your microwave is, it may cook even more quickly than that. But you start out for 1 minute, take it out, spin it, or stir it if it's needed, and then put it back in for either maybe up to even 3 more minutes, depending on your microwave. Well, let's see how this turns out. Got about 30 seconds left on this.
So Bobbie, we got a question for you.
Perfect.
We're wanting to know for those carnivores out there, at what stage would you add something like smoked ham or some type of meat product?
I would add the meat when I'm adding the vegetables in. Any of my hard stuff, again, because I want to control the portions. If I'm stirring it in this bowl, it's going to be everywhere, which is great if you don't mind that. I, again, I want every bite to have a flavor of everything that I'm adding into my quiche. So, yeah, certainly. You can add just about anything, any kind of meats into this. That's no problem at all. So after 1 minute, we're going to look at it.
Next question, do you pre-cook any uncooked meat like chicken?
Yes, I would pre-cook chicken. Anything that if it's going to be dangerous, if it's raw, cooked, everything else doesn't have to be. I would probably sear a steak because I like that crust on my steak if I'm going to add it to a quiche. So I would do that. Let me show you what this looks like. Again, just a little bit closer. You can see a cute little quiche. Now, technically, again, this is probably a frittata because it doesn't have the crust, but you could add a crust at the bottom if you wanted to. I just prefer not to do that because of.
Next question was, what was the baking time again?
Anywhere with an oven, I'd start checking it at 30 minutes and typically not more than 45. Now, when you're checking this for the college students, you kind of just want to raise that up and see if there's any egg left at the bottom. And if not, you're good to go ahead and eat that. Any other questions?
Not yet.
All right. So other thing I want to show my college students out there, really anybody, these are great little things for brunch. You can have a bunch of these and they're individual, so people don't have to worry about cutting into the actual bigger quiche. So these are real fun for just like parties and get-togethers, and you can fancy it up with different dishes. So this is one little ramekin. I get everything on Amazon. If you know me, you know that's really true. You can get all of these things on Amazon just to kind of pretty things up. These are pretty standard. You'll see these in restaurants. Oftentimes they're made, you're making creme brulee with them, but in this case, you really can make anything with these. You can put macaroni and cheese in there and use the microwave to make a wonderful home-style macaroni and cheese right from your dorm room. These are adorable. This is a little pan, so people don't know what's in it until they open it up. Again, just plenty of other options you can use to make your quiche, just to make it a little fancier, make whoever you're cooking for feel a little more special. The last thing I'm going to show you is one other preparation you can do. This would be putting the quiche actually inside the pepper. So this is actually looks really neat when you put it on a plate. I would layer the bottom of it with some arugula. If you like salad, go ahead and get some arugula, add whatever fresh vegetables you like to that. And then you can put this guy right in the middle. It actually is a very nice preparation. To do this, you're going to want to cut around the top. We're going to get our little garbage over here. And what you're going to do is you're going to just make this kind of like a cup of quiche in a pepper. Big thing with all peppers, if you see those little white things in there, those taste awful. You want to get rid of those. Make sure it's that in between. Always get rid of that, no matter what you're making with your pepper dish. And you don't want to include seeds. That will give you a very bitter taste. So this is very straightforward. I've just hollowed out this pepper. No seeds left in it. You can see the pepper. And all you're going to do is the same thing. Layer it in or mix it all together, whatever you want to do. You can just put your ingredients in there, pour your quiche in there, and you're going to bake these again about 30 minutes at that 375 temperature. This is going to flatten out just a little bit because it's roasting the pepper as well, but it's a really neat presentation and a good way to show off your quiche and make a little fancy dinner if you'd like.
Bobbie, I had a clarifying question. Is there a way to get the crust in the small containers?
Yeah, I mean, you can layer the bottom of it. If you have an oven, that's going to be your best bet. You want to cook it just a little bit. But yeah, you can most certainly put pie crust just in the bottom of this. I would get the pie crust from the store that you unroll versus the ones that are in the tin if you want to do something like this with these little containers. And you can basically just, draw around with the cutter, with a knife if you want to, just to get that exact shape of this, and most certainly use this with the pie crust as well. All right, let's see what this looks like here. When you cut into your quiche, you want to, again, it to be nice and firm. If you like a quiche that's a little bit more airy, one little trick for this, and this is with scrambled eggs as well, if you add 1 teaspoon for every egg, you're going to get that really big, fluffy egg that a lot of people like. So again, even with scrambled eggs, it's a good way to get that nice fluffiness a lot of people want in their eggs. So basically, you're just going to take this out, add this onto your plate. Again, I would probably put like a little dressed salad, so some arugula or spring mix with a vinaigrette kind of on the side or under it. And you can see here, the quiche is nice and layered. Got all kinds of the good vegetables exactly in the portions I want them. And again, can be made with meat. Pretty much anything you want to throw into it's going to be delicious.
Yes, we have some comments about we'd like to come over for the food.
Well, I've got enough of it. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. 2 of them anyway. I'm going to eat quiche for days. I may send home care packages if anyone needs any. All right, so that's pretty much it. You can see how quick you can make a quiche. I mean, most of the effort is in the cooking time, so you can sit back and enjoy mimosa while you're making brunch. All right, any other questions?
All right, now a lot of comments about sending quiche our way. Folks really like the pepper, great idea. Thank you for sharing the information. Love your kitchen.
Thank you.
Awesome, fabulous
Last
lesson.
year.
All right, we will be sending out the recipe to everyone, so just through an email with an attachment, and we'll be also sharing the recording with everyone as well.
I just want to say thank you for everyone that came out. This is the first time we've done this. As you guys probably know, I love to be active around campus. I love my campus wellness committee and Becky and all the work her and Kyle and everyone else who's on that committee do to keep reminding me about healthy living and making sure we're making dishes that are going to be good for the family and good for your waistline as well. But I do appreciate everyone coming out to see this recipe. Next month, we're going to try this another time, and I'm going to make a one-pan chicken dish. So again, I'm really trying to gear this at people that you can soup it up, make it a little more fancy if you want, or you can just kind of get it in the oven if you got to get home and you got, you know, kids to feed, kids to bathe and put to bed, or you got papers to grade like I do usually. So just different ways that you can make those dishes really be wonderful and still be healthy and good for the whole family. If you have any questions, email me. You know, I'm in the VSU address book, happy to answer any questions. And once we're through this pandemic, I'll be happy to come and cook for you at your house.
All right. Thank you, Bobbie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.